Hi, welcome to Iron's Health Talk with Dr. Akram. For last 3 episodes, we've been discussing about COVID-19, the infection itself, how it spreads around. Then we talked about a few burial practices. But the following 3 programs we have planned to talk. The program itself is called Going Forward, and it says what it means. It's like how we're going to go out of this crisis. Like, for example, some people would have lost their jobs, some people would have lost their income, some unfortunate would have lost a family member, and after all, we lost our freedom to move, freedom to go around. And we are suspecting about each other because we are not sure the other person is carrying the disease. The infection, which we can't see, is causing a big stress. Stress is a natural phenomenon which has protected our ancestors when they lived in the forest. When a lion chasing, the same stress which produced in your body made you survive. It produced enormous effort in your body, and it produced that surge of energy, and your lungs filled up with oxygen, and that pumped into your body. Your blood system, your blood pressure went up, your heart rate went up. This all pumped enough energy and oxygen into your muscles, and which made you run for your life, and that helped you. It's exactly the same thing for a zebra which is living in a savanna, and when a lion is chasing, this zebra runs for its life. And once the danger is over, the zebra stops at that point, and its body system shuts down. It just comes back to normal. But for some reason, for human, we could not find this stop switch. If you are in a traffic jam, for example, you get stressed. Then when you come back home, you can't switch back. A same thing, the stress is going around at work, and you come back home, you can't switch, you can't sleep, you can't do your normal day-to-day life because the stress shuts down your normal mechanism. When you are stressed, those stress hormones, they do not have to bother about your day-to-day function. Only function of the stress hormones is to make you survive for that moment. Let's look at a few studies. There is a Stanford University neurophysiologist called Robert Sapolsky. He has spent entire life of him to study about stress. He has spent 30 years in Africa, in Kenya, in Masai Mara, where he studied baboons, because baboons were a perfect example to study stress. These baboons had 3 hours to feed and produce nutrition for themselves. Then they had about 9 hours for themselves, and this time some of them made the life miserable for the other. And Robert Sapolsky saw this incident, and he thought this is the best thing to study. And what he did, he got ready and he went with few darts and dart these animals, and then he went and he checked the hormones. He checked the stress hormones. Of course, it's adrenaline and corticosteroids, but these are the basic 2 hormones which increase your stress. And what he found was really interesting for humans. In those cohorts of animals, there was about 100 in this group. In this 100, the dominant animals, or the hierarchy, they produce less stress hormones. On the same time, the lower hierarchies, they were filled with stress hormones, and that was the problem. And the lower hierarchy had higher blood pressure, high heart rate. They were always under stress. Their guts didn't function well. They had stomach ulcers, and of course, their reproductive function and every other function was low. And there was the same time, there was another study going on in London, which was started in 1967 by Professor Sir Michael Marmot. And he studied 28,000 civil servants. That study was called Whitehall study because it was based in this Whitehall area where all the civil servants worked. In this area, it was exactly the same thing, hierarchy and lower rankers. Hierarchy has produced so much stress on the lower rankies. And what they found out was the people who were in the lower level were off sick most of the time. They had stomach problems. And after all, they were producing a huge fat around their belly, which was not usual those days. And they had stomach ulcers and they have more sick leave. And that was a study. And what happened with the baboons? I come back to the story of the baboons. And after a few years, after about 20 years of study, these baboons moved their place and they went and ate in a garbage dump where the garbage was thrown from a restaurant, and some of the meat was contaminated with tuberculosis. That was a closing point, and lots of baboons died. Most of them were the hierarchies, and he was almost shocked that 20 years of studies went wrong at that point. He had so much of data and he couldn't study further. But the nature has taught him something else. Then when he kept following the rest of the group, what happened? There were only few males were left, and they were the low rackies. They were good guys on the other hand. So once they formed their troops, these low rackies were nice people or nice animals. They were treating the women nice. They were not bullying anyone. And they produced a society with less stress. They were friendly. They were spending more time on grooming than making life miserable for any. But what happens is these baboons groups, sometimes the baboons from the other groups, when they came and joined, they came with this wrong mentality. What they tried to do was, for they had this arrogant behavior. They tried to chase each other and tried to make life miserable for the other. But this new group, they changed their behavior as well to be pacific, to be nice to the other group. And when he studied them, the stress hormone levels were low. What we get from here is not the main message is like, if you can calm down yourself, you can produce less stress hormones and you have a better life, and your life becomes longer, the longevity, and it all comes from this main stress hormone. Let's see what's happening with this COVID-19. We all stressed and we are thinking about it. Is there any way we can come out of this stress? Thank you for joining us again in this show. And I would like to invite our special guest. He's joining from Romania. His name is Dr. Nicolae Iordache, and he has got a medical degree and he has done an MBA in Cleveland University, USA. Dr. Nicolae Iordache, at the moment he teaches medical doctors and companies. Please welcome Dr. Iordache.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for watching us.
How is the weather in Romania?
Weather is incredibly dry, so probably an answer you wouldn't expect from England. It's terribly dry, so we were praying for a good rain for more than a month. So it's quite sad.
Are you guys locked down as well, or you can roam around freely and enjoy the nature?
Well, yeah, weather is nice, and well, the place where I am right now, it's quite generous with me, so I could still enjoy the nature. It's fine.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, let's go to a subject. I think, what is your perspective about lockdown? I think, did you have kind of similar thing in the past? I think I know Romania was a communist country. I don't know what kind of experience you had that time. Does it? Can you bring any similarities with these two events?
I was kind of born in a lockdown. If you consider that people from Romania wouldn't travel, We didn't travel because we were a closed country, and then we wouldn't travel because we didn't have the means for that. So this is one of the reasons. Then we did have a lot of economic issues. So food was very scarce, and it was a problem for most of the families.
Could you go to a supermarket and buy whatever you wanted those times, a kilo of banana or kilo of meat and all those things? Was it freely available?
First of all, we didn't have supermarkets.
Oh,
so
right.
The concept of supermarket wasn't quite popular here. So we didn't have. We did have some shops which were, providing different sorts of foods, but they're not really supermarkets as we understand them now. On one hand, on the other hand, bananas existed in 70s, but totally disappeared in 80s.
All right. But did you have probably other different kinds of fruits, or was it?
Well, we have ours, so mainly ours, and mainly when it was their times. So.
Did you have to, whenever you wanted to buy something, did you get it freely those days, or you have to stay in queues, or how was it? How was the situation by then?
Well, if you try to compare what the situation is now with what happened in Romania by then, so we went to a point of a crisis, but the crisis installed quite slowly. It was like, being in water which was heating up and up and up and up. So you never felt that it was like something really shocking. We had a lot of needs that were not covered. But on the other hand, we adapted very easily. So I think that would be the difference between what we see now and what it happened then. What
I'm going to say is, like, at the moment we are all locked down in England. The schools are closed, shops are closed. You can't go to the shopping malls. You can't go on holidays. People are in tension. They feel stressed. What do you say about it? Did you feel a kind of similar thing in the past, or do you feel it now? Or what do you relate to something?
Well, I think it's less with what I see I remember from the past. It's more with what I see right now here. It's close to what I see right now in Romania. There are people who, if you really live in a block of flat in a big town, when there are strict rules and you cannot move much outside, it's gonna be frustrated. If you are a child and you spend a few months in a house, when you're growing and you
that's true, yeah.
You expect a social life, and nobody is gonna give you back the years from the age 14 to 14.5 years old. For older people it's different, but I think what scares people is first the invisibility. So they don't see the virus. They don't see even the people suffering of the virus, most of it. We only hear it on the media. We see consequences. People don't understand them very well, or don't want to understand it because they have different needs or different ambitions. And
I'm going to put you a new question here.
Perspective. So nobody knows what is going to be. I mean, people speculate like we're going to have a release of restrictions, slow release of restrictions in next month, while others are saying that restrictions should apply 2 years.
Dr. Iordache, the tension we're feeling now. Now, what we in UK, we are having this tension because of this terror. There's a terror in a microbial format which you can't see it. Did you feel any kind of similar terror? I just imagine from outside those days, you never knew who was the security guy who was informing the government. So you would have felt kind of similar terror in a different perspective. Can you relate something to that?
Well, definitely there are similarities. On the other hand, there is not everybody was threatened. Like it is like now. I mean,
Okay.
not everybody has.
So it's not like the Western media said everybody was threatened and everybody was suppressed.
No, not really, not really. More some people, but we adjusted to that. I mean, we were kind of used to.
Oh, okay, people were
this
used
situation.
to.
So,
Yeah.
what happened in our communism was gradual installation. So
Okay.
the stress effect was not as present as it is in these days. Also, people in the communists came after a not so good period in the history. So I mean, we were living better and better and better and better and better, culminating like last year or 2 years before. Or
Okay,
something.
so the
And when we see it, we just fall from
so the
from
stressful
high hope.
situation came gradually. It didn't
Yeah.
happen suddenly like this COVID-19, which locked our people. There is a question from the Facebook viewer. He says they find it very difficult to keep the Romanians inside in UK. How do you manage in Romania?
Well, I would expect it to be. I think there are two kinds of Romanians that fled the country. So there would be some highly educated guys who are doctors. I have good friends who are doctors there, and or former colleagues that are doctors there, and they're doing quite good professional IT guys and so on. And I don't think anybody has problems with that. And then we do have people with a lower education going either to take low jobs or low paid jobs, or that some other people don't want. Okay, and then there would be some guys who are doing the criminal business or something like that, and those guys are really hard to
control.
So
right.
And it happens here the same. So we have a town,
Excellent.
a small town in the south of the country. The whole town is quarantined because of these guys who returned. Guess where? From Western Europe, mainly England.
Okay, so these guys went back from England, they carry the disease with them, and they were just probably roaming around freely and spread the disease easily. Okay.
There's no wonder why they got it when they were there, and there's no wonder how they managed to spread it here. Even we have a medical nurse who died in that hospital, the hospital of that town.
In the hospital where they live.
Yeah.
Okay, they're interesting. But is there any way that we could help each other at this point and get this stress level low?
I think it is the only way to get over these things. Of course, governments can do things, can make things easier and so on. But I think in this kind of crisis, this is the paradox, because actually, people joining together and joining forces who do a lot of good things, but now, you have to apply social distancing. So that is doing not a nice job for the time being.
For social distancing, anyway, can we think some alternative? Are there any way we can be connected through media or Skype or?
Well, definitely there are. I mean, people social distancing, but they don't meet each other. But doesn't mean that they don't speak. I would actually expect that during these times people would rediscover old friends and will make new friends.
That's a good thing.
We should be looking for it.
I suppose, I think even we are socially distanced, but compared to the past, we are more socially closer in these days because of these telephones, media, messaging, WhatsApp, isn't it? So what are there anything you would like to say at this point before the breaks? And we would like to hear what you guys doing in Romania at the moment.
What I would like to say is, I want to continue on this idea. working together and being close to each other and trying to help each other, it is the only way. And actually what happens now, I mean, throughout the history, there were periods, one after another one, in a shorter distance, when the humanity or large communities have to struggle against a common enemy. Our last common enemy, well, in Romania was the communist regime, but in most of Europe, the last large enemy was the World War II. So people lost somehow the memory of putting everyone together and doing things. And we as a community, we as society become a society of individual guys, and we were more or less fostering.
So what you're trying to say, these new calamities or things like this is not new to the world. This happened in the past. Is
Exactly.
that right? So it's
Exactly.
like the Second World War, First World War, and we had the Spanish flu, and we had lots of pandemics.
All the pandemics throughout the history, so all the wars and all the pandemics.
Yeah.
And before a local war or regional war, it didn't have to be a real world war, because people, I mean, there was no, people wouldn't travel from one place to another so easy as now. So if it happened a war between two countries, it was like the world war for those guys. For the people.
I can remember, I was reading in a history book. It's like 4,000 years before Christ. Somewhere at that point, the population, like the huge amount of population, died, and roughly about 20,000 to 40,000 people lived. And from there, every human being of this new generation started. I can't exactly remember the dates. I think it's something to look into to satisfy ourselves. This is not new to us. Before the break, I'm going to ask a question. How is the Romanian medical system? How is it helping? How is it coping with this new infection going around?
Well, we were completely unprepared for that, although the signs were quite a long time ago. I mean, they were a long time. In January, you would expect it. The way it started to be in China, it was something that you should expect it soon. But authorities didn't take too much care. So we were lucky that it didn't struck us the very first. So we were like 2 to 3 weeks behind. We are 2 to 3 weeks behind Western countries like Italy, Spain, and France.
So that gave you some time to prepare, I suppose, for the.
It gives some time to prepare. It gives some time, because China is now, has solved their problems somehow, and they can supply these countries. There is a huge. Doctors in Romania, and I know you've done medicine you have done your medical studies in Romania.
We studied together, don't we?
Not quite strictly adhering to the rules here in Romania, so there was a lot of laxities. Imagine we have quite huge problems with hospital infections. And this is because of the system. It's not like, this is because of Romania, because the doctors cover the truth, and because the authorities do not take measures. So in this kind of mentality, now we have this kind of enemy. Anyway, so far so good. So it take a week or more to double the number of deaths so far, yes, which is not really bad for the moment. But we will see what we should do. Yesterday, although there is a lockdown in the country, the Ministry of the Interior came and said that the police guys are going to give some light. I don't know if you're familiar. I don't know how this in English. They go to the church and they take a lit candle, and it has to be spread throughout the community. So they said that they have to do this, which is
okay. So they're
middle
trying
of the night. It's unbelievable.
Excellent. Excellent. What we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break before we go back to more discussion. And thank you guys being with us, and we'll see you after a short break.